This story is about a little girl.
Gigi.
Gigi!
Winner of 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Gigi would be the final musical masterpiece from director Vincent Minnelli and legendary producer Arthur Freed.
Gigi was the crowning achievement of the Freed unit.
What you try to create is a little magic, you know?
You just felt you were with the best, doing the best.
But despite a dream cast and a dazzling score from the makers of My Fair Lady, Gigi reached screens only after a string of setbacks and struggles, from censorship battles over its sexually suggestive plot to a troubled shoot, and fears that filmgoers would turn a deaf ear to a traditional movie musical.
Nobody wanted to see movie musicals anymore.
It's a bore.
The film is about prostitution.
It's just impossible.
It's like, really? They got away with that? But MGM does get away with it. It's one of the great musicals written for the screen.
In 1951, there was a memo sent to both Dory Sherry, who was VP of production then, as well as Arthur Freed. And the memo said, hey, take a look at this semi-successful French film of 1948 called Gigi. I think it has a lot of sparkle.
Gigi is very different from any of Colette's other writing. She wrote it in very, very dark days of the Second World War, and her husband Maurice, who was Jewish, was in hiding. So it's a very difficult time. But Colette was looking back at her own 20s and 30s during the really golden age of Paris.
Je t'ai apporté des agents de change.
Oh, merci, tonton.
Oh, vraiment, Gaston, vous nous gâtez trop.
She wrote it as a kind of a throwaway. It was she never considered it one of her major works, like Sherry and so forth. But it's the one that's endured.
J'ai gagné.
True stories became the basis for the novella. She heard one of the stories from 2 aging courtesans who were now running a hotel on the French Riviera, and they had raised a niece. And they had raised her in the days of the gay 90s in Paris to hook a millionaire. And she did. But they thought she would hook him to become his mistress. But the young woman knew better and waited till he proposed marriage.
Me faire un sort, ça veut dire que je m'en irai d'ici avec vous et que je coucherai dans votre lit.
It's the education of a cocotte. You know, that was really a totally risqué subject.
Les dents, les cils, les cheveux, là. Tu n'étais pas complètement idiote, bien entendu.
In Hollywood, censors considered Gigi's bluntly sexual content offensive and virtually unfilmable.
Bien attaché.
Mon chéri, je t'avais pourtant bien dit. Ah, Gaston, Dieu mettez-moi que je l'avais dit.
Eh ben, vous l'en avez trop dit.
But then what happened was Anita Luce, who had written Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, wanted to make this into a straight stage show. And what really put it over, and it ran 6 months on Broadway, was she had come upon this unknown girl named Audrey Hepburn. So now Freed, it's, buzzing around in his mind.
Freed also didn't have to look further than the MGM backlot to find the perfect screen Gigi.
I was doing a film called Lily, a modest little film, almost a B-movie, and I had refused all forms of glamour. I was playing an orphan, and I didn't want makeup, and what I didn't know was that I was the laughing stock of the studio. Everyone thought this girl is absolutely crazy. And Arthur Freed, who had brought me for An American in Paris, really felt sorry for me. So he came on the set and said, Leslie, what are they doing to you? I have to save your career. We must make another film together. Have you any ideas? And I came up with 1 or 2 goofy ideas, and then I said Gigi, which was being played on Broadway by Audrey Hepburn. And he said, I'll get back to you on that.
It was a done deal as far as Fried was concerned, because in his mind he knew exactly what the synopsis of the story was, and he thought it would make a perfect musical.
He knows that there are problems with the censors. You have a story about a young girl who is being trained in the demi-mondaine art. She's learning to be a prostitute. The production code looked very askance at this, and they tried for a couple years, from 55 to 57, back and forth. Fried was saying, well, this is, it's a moral girl. We'll stress that, that she really doesn't want any of this, Yeah, she will take it because she's so in love with him, but then he proposes to her. So it is, in the end, a moral story.
By the time the production started on the film, they just said to Arthur, you're going to probably do it with great taste, so we'll just leave it to you.
Fried envisioned a film shot in Paris that would be the ultimate in sophistication, the screen equivalent of Broadway's biggest current hit, My Fair Lady. With that parallel in mind, he turned to that stage musical's celebrated creators, author and lyricist Alan J. Lerner and composer Frederick Loewe, both past collaborators with Fried at MGM.
Alan J. Lerner had a 3-picture deal, and he owed them one more picture. And Fried wanted him to do Gigi.
Alan J. Lerner and his partner Frederick Loewe were the toast of Broadway. And Alan J. Lerner, we were so exhausted with My Fair Lady, which was mounted in 1956, he just wanted to do the libretto. And then when he found out that the contract that he had signed also involved him writing lyrics for the songs, well, then that made him ask Frederick Loewe. Frederick Loewe didn't like to work. He liked to party. So he said no, he didn't sign on. He said he would read what he had written and read the original Colette, and he was enchanted by it, so he came aboard.
The songs are incredible. There's not a bad song in the piece. They're all memorable, theatrical, operatic almost. And but they're so perfect in that piece.
I thought Alan J. was so seductive. He was so witty, so charming. I understand he would have preferred Audrey Hepburn, but I think his lyrics are just wonderful.
I don't understand the Parisians making love every time they get the chance. I don't understand the Parisians wasting every lovely night on romance.
When cameras rolled in the summer of 1957, calling the shots was director Vincent Minnelli, the meticulous filmmaker that Fried had always wanted for the job.
If you're going to do a musical in the right way and have it linger with people a while, then I think you have to put just as much thought and sweat and intelligence into it as you do in a dramatic picture. And that certainly applies to every musical number.
Working with Vincent was very thrilling. Every day I looked forward to the day. He had a sense of rhythm, a sense of speed. With him I could collaborate a lot in the staging, so you really feel you're part of the film. Also, we had one characteristic in common. We were both prop men. He was always fiddling with the background props, the colors. We were doing I Don't Understand the Parisians. We did it once, twice, 3, 5, 10, 15 times. And I thought, what does he want? What does he want? And I kept saying, Vincent, what do you want? What's wrong? What do I do wrong? And he'd say, do it again. So I'd do it yet once again. Once again, darling, once again. I thought, I'm going to die. This is impossible. And then finally I did it, and he said, oh, the swans were right. I hadn't realized it was because of the swans in the background.
I don't understand the Parisians thinking love so miraculous and grand. But they rave about it and won't live without it. I don't understand the Parisians.
Gigi's connection with My Fair Lady didn't end with the songs of Lerner and Loewe. To design the film's costumes and decor, Fried secured the services of another member of the My Fair Lady team, photographer and designer Cecil Beaton.
Cecil was, I think nobody gives him the credit he deserves on that film. Every morning he was there at makeup, making sure the cocottes were made up very, very pale, no rouge, no false lashes. He would make sure about the hair, he made sure they wore their hats at the proper place. He brought new flowers on the set every day and was a sticker for authenticity.
The costuming is superb. You look at it and you say, well, gee, all the clothes are just freshly laundered. Yes, it's a musical. That's part of it. Everybody's beautiful in the film.
I was a young mother. I wasn't a kid. But you put the costume on someone and half the job is done. You put a child's costume on and you become a child. You imagine yourself way back when, and you become.
Thank heaven for little girl.
Equally key to setting Gigi's tone was the worldly persona of co-star Maurice Chevalier, cast as the story's narrator, Honoré Lachal.
The character of Honoré in the original novella, Gigi Bacolette, is only alluded to. He's the uncle of Gaston. He is a wealthy gadabout, a man of bon vivant. He loved women, he didn't marry. He epitomized the life of that period.
Ben, toi tu fais ce que tu veux. Moi j'ai retrouvé ma petite amie, charmante, délicieuse, 19 ans dans 8 jours. Vous pouvez être jeune.
In the 1948 French film of Gigi, the character of Honoré starts to take form, and then in the film a decade later, he's fleshed out into Maurice Chevalier.
Bonjour, monsieur. Bonjour, madame. And compagnie.
Lerner wrote the part of Honoré for Chevalier, and it was a rather delicate matter because Chevalier in Hollywood after the war was slightly persona non grata because he had performed for the Vichy government, but they were determined to get him in the film, and so it was a done deal.
Good afternoon. As you see, this lovely city all around us is Paris. And this lovely park is, of course, the Bois de Boulogne.
He's the uncle, and he's our master of ceremonies. He's our way in to Paris at this time, as Maurice Chevalier was our way into so many Paramount musical comedy operettas. And this man who has seen it all, done it all, been there, said that, and is just very comfortable in his times.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Honoré Lachal, born Paris. Date? Not lately. This is 1900, so let's just say not in this century.
Chevalier was getting up there in years, and he was talking about you don't have the same problems anymore that you did when you were young, and bang, Lerner got an idea. I'm glad I'm not young anymore.
How lovely to sit here in the shade with none of the woes of man and maid. I'm glad I'm not young anymore.
People expect me to say, oh, he was a great guy, full of fun. No, he wasn't. Chevalier was morose. He took himself a bit seriously. I remember that he took us on the river on a bateau mouche dinner, which was just magic. A very good meal, and it was really lovely. But otherwise, he was very composed and very quiet, and he'd keep to himself.
Youth is the thing, Gaston. Youth.
Now, who to get for, Gaston? Dirk Bogarde was approached. He was a heartthrob at this time, but he was contracted to J. Arthur Rank, and J. Arthur Rank wasn't going to let him out. Who to get? Now, Gaston is a bored person. He's haughty. He's got all that money, has looks and all, and he's elegant at the same time. And Louis Jourdan, conveys that.
Gigi?
Gaston, do you make love all the time?
I beg your pardon?
Do you make love all the time?
Good heavens, no. The only people who make love all the time are liars.
Louis Jourdan was finicky. Never, he was always wearing his bone. He found lots of faults with everything instead of just having a great time.
Europe is breeding a generation of vandals and ingrates.
Alan J. Lerner told me that he wrote It's a Bore to express what Louis felt.
I'm bored. Bored? Look at all the captivating, fascinating things there are to do.
Name two.
Look at all the pleasures, all the myriad of treasures we have got.
Like what?
Now, he didn't want to do it because of the singing. And Lerner said, we're going to do this like Rex Harrison did in My Fair Lady. You're going to, sing the songs.
Just a child, a growing child, but so backward for her years. If a boy her age appears, I am certain he will never call again. She's a scamp and a brat, doesn't know where she is at, unequipped and undesirable to men.
Louis Jourdan was a wonderful singer. I think his voice is delightful. And I wish I'd had such a good voice.
When did your sparkle turn to fire and your warmth become desire? Oh, what miracle has made you the way you are?
When was the suicide? Last night. How did she do it? The usual way. Insufficient poison.
Isabel was a charming grand lady of the old style. She kept her corset on from morning till night with the most incredible discipline, and she was a darling.
Now, we will try it once more. Remember, you will go to the door properly, turn, walk in properly, and sit down properly. Now go on.
I love the scenes with Isabel in her home, where she's teaching me to walk and be a lady. I contributed a lot to that.
But don't flop into the chair. Insinuate yourself.
You have to be skillful physically to be able to do that, to be gawky and then to be elegant. You have to know how to use your body for that.
Gigi, if truth be known, is My Fair Lady. It's the Pygmalion Galatea myth, crossed with Cinderella. It's the grooming of the girl and turning off on a princess.
What time tomorrow will we get? Can I watch you play roulette? May I stay up late for supper? Is it awfully, awfully awful?
What amazes me about the film as a musical is that a lot of the best numbers are interior. They're shot interior. They're in small rooms. And yet you don't feel that way. The night they invented champagne, there's so much razzle-dazzle.
The night they invented champagne, it's plain as it can be. They thought of you and me.
I don't think the filmmakers get the credit they should get, because in order to understand how to shoot in a small space, you have to know the way the room is built, where you can put the camera. You can't feel any claustrophobia there. It has to be a sense that these performers have all the space they need.
Man has ever been as happy as we are tonight.
And the actors are so good that you can imagine in your head Minnelli enjoying watching them. The great number with Hermione Gingold and Chevalier, very little camera movement. It's all done with the lighting because you don't want to take anything away from watching them. These two old pros at the pinnacle of what they could do in a movie.
I can remember everything as if it were yesterday. We met at 9.
We met at 8.
I was on time.
No, you were late.
Ah, yes? I remember it well. We danced.
There is a beautiful moment in the film which happened to be the birthday of Chevalier, and they surprised him with a little birthday party. And that was the day that they shot I Remember It Well. And Chevalier comes up to the line, am I getting old?
Visita mi canal.
Am I getting old?
Oh no, not you.
And everybody had tears in their eyes.
Oh, yes. I remember it well.
In earlier films like An American in Paris, Minnelli and Fried had crafted an imaginary France on the MGM backlot. But Gigi would be different. This time, many of the scenes would be filmed on location, in the actual City of Light.
Everybody was thrilled to be doing this in Paris. I remember general elation to be doing the story by Colette right here in Paris.
They couldn't do Paris in the backlot at MGM. They had to go to Paris to do Gigi. Paris is a character in the movie.
There's an ice cream sundae quality about the film. Minnelli loves Paris. He finally gets to really shoot Paris in a way that no one else has ever. This is Minnelli soaking it up the way a tourist does, saying, we got to get that, we got to get that.
But difficulties of shooting 1900 in modern Paris were unbelievable. We had to do it in the month of August because Paris in those years was completely closed down. There were no restaurants, there were no shops, there hardly was any traffic, but there were antennas and modern gadgets all around the street. And it was the worst summer in 20 years.
And of course, Minnelli believes in a lot of rehearsals. So usually they're on the set, you know, early in the morning, and it's by 4 or 5 o'clock they're still rehearsing. The light is leaving, and they still haven't gotten the shot. They usually get it about that time, but late.
Joe Rottenberg was a dear and a sweetheart to me. I remember him always with his little eyeglass looking at the clouds and saying, in 1 minute, and we're going to have a very quick one. So he'd count 10, 9, 8, 6, 7. You know, and I would start acting, and it was, so difficult because there was just one take possible. Then the clouds would come in.
Gaston and Liane are joining me here at Maxime's tonight.
They're shooting in Paris in August. The French closed their businesses in Paris, but Maxime's, it's the biggest time in Paris because all the tourists are there. But fortunately, the Venables that owned Maxime's at the time were friends of Fried's. They agreed to close Maxime's for 4 days.
I remember just crowds, cables, all the extras sweating profusely under the lamps. And we had musicians, we had gentlemen, we had cocottes, and we had the whole crew. And with Minnelli getting more and more irritated, everybody was sick because we'd just done Le Palais de Glace, the ice rink. They'd caught cold there, and this was a heat wave there. I was in bliss. I was really happy. I thought the whole thing was terrific fun.
It was such a boxed-in place. There were only 2 doors, you know, and so the circulation was incredible, you know, with all these people, and there had to be in hardly enough room for the camera. So finally I had to keep everyone out.
As they were shooting in Maxime's, the camera boom went right through the glass ceiling. And Fried got hysterical, and then the head waiter came by and said, "No, monsieur, you don't understand. The corks go through the ceiling almost every night."
How delicious!
Tension at Maxime's was just the start of a troubled new phase in Gigi's production. The tightly budgeted shoot was falling behind schedule. Minnelli and Fried were running out of time. And back at MGM, anxious executives were running out of patience.
You must see this in light of what MGM was going through. 1957, MGM loses money for the first time in its history since 1925. They're moving to television like all the other studios are, and the musical was winding down this time. I mean, you take a look at 1957, only 2 musicals in the top 10. So this was scaring the powers that be, and they were ordered back to the studio. So you had a problem matching the Paris stuff with the Culver City stuff. So you got enormous problems here.
Say a prayer for me tonight.
As shooting neared an end, a new controversy would emerge, this time over Gigi's soundtrack. Leslie Caron had recorded her songs before filming with Gigi's brilliant musical director, Andre Previn. But Caron's vocals would not survive the final cut.
I never was told that I was going to be dubbed. I made a recording with Andre Previn, and I did the best I could, but it's true, it's a very unprofessional voice.
Unto your Waterloo whispers my heart. Pray I'll be Wellington, not Bonaparte. Oh, say a prayer for me this evening.
Bow your head and please stay on your knees tonight.
One day, I met Andre in the streets of MGM, and he said, "Do you know that you're dubbed?" I said, "What?" So I went straight to Arthur Freed's office, and I got into his office. There was a secretary, she got me in, and I said, "Arthur, is this true? Did you dub it without telling me?" And he said, "Oh, just a minute, darling," and he walked out. And I'm sitting there waiting. And finally, after 10 minutes, I go out and say, "Margie, when is Arthur coming back?" And he said, "Oh, didn't he tell you? He just went home 10 minutes ago."
But not all of Gigi's troubles could be dodged so easily, as Arthur Freed was about to discover at the film's first preview.
They're rushing because it's delayed. And Margaret Booth, the old trusty editor, comes in, and she offers her services to editor Adrienne Fazan. And what Adrienne Fazan felt during the screening is that she had taken all the warmth out of it, all the sentiment out of this film.
The preview of the film did not do all that well, and Lerner and Lowe thought some scenes should be reshot.
And Lerner is saying, "If you don't do anything about this, I want to buy the film." And they misunderstand and think he wants to buy into the film. And he says, "No, I want to buy the film."
It was a bluff. And they must have been good poker players, because the studio said no, if it was that important, they would pay for it, and they did. Then they had to pull the cast all back together.
Minnelli was off doing The Reluctant Debutante in Europe at this time. So Charles Walters, he came aboard for the 11 days of retakes. It's very interesting, you know, Adrienne Fazan says that when she re-edited the film, after the 11 days of retakes, she restored a lot of the Minnelli footage, and then it played beautifully the second preview and the third preview. And then people that worked on it knew it was special, the buzz was special.
Freed says, "We're not going to open this movie nationwide. We're going to open this movie in a theater in New York City that's owned by the Schuberts, a legitimate theater, because he wants to open this movie like a Broadway musical."
Opening night on Theater Row in Manhattan, where Gigi, a new film musical by the composers of My Fair Lady, draws celebrities. Lights now on Hermione Gingold and Maurice Chevalier, two stellar performers in a story of Paris at the turn of the century when the city was at its gayest. Broadway welcomes Old Paris, depicted on the real-life movie screen.
It would be presented as a theatrical production. It would be presented in a roadshow engagement, and it would play this not only in New York, but in all major cities. Reserved seating, of course, up the ticket prices, a intermission, a booklet, a souvenir booklet, to give it prestige. And indeed, it paid off. In some of these theaters, it played 6 months to a year, sometimes a year, before it went into its regular engagements.
Gigi ended up becoming the most successful Fried musical ever in the history of his 47 musicals.
I think the New York Times critic, Bosley Crowther, said, no need to make My Fair Lady as a film. It's been done. Lerner and Loewe did it with Gigi.
Now, would you repeat that again, please?
I cried the first time I saw it. I thought I was awful.
They've pounded into my head that I'm backward for my age, but I know very well what all this means. To take care of me beautifully means that I shall go away from here with you and that I shall sleep in your bed.
I thought my voice was irritating. I was extremely critical of myself. Nothing was good enough, ever.
I saw the film when it came out. I must have been 11 years old. All the kids were going to see it. None of us knew it was about prostitution. That was the genius of the system, that they made these films on two levels simultaneously. If you were old enough or if you were looking for it, you knew. And if you didn't want to know, you didn't. And it wasn't just kids. There were people all over the United States who didn't understand that.
Again, Gigi!
The most amazing thing about Gigi was that when it came to the Academy Awards, not only did Gigi get nominated, but 9 Academy Awards. Not nominations, 9 Academy Awards. No motion picture musical had ever gotten 9 Academy Awards. And if you count the special Academy Award to Chevalier, that's 10 Academy Awards. It was like a welcoming back for Chevalier, you know?
And of course, Minnelli hadn't won an Oscar yet. He was nominated for An American in Paris, but he didn't win.
But Minnelli finally got it for Gigi, and it's sort of poetic justice because he really wrapped up an era with a bow in that film. And it's hard to imagine the post-war cinema from 1945 to 1959 without Minnelli, and particularly the musical.
What you try to create is a little magic, you know? And if that depends on the turning of a leaf, fine, so be it. But the main search is for a little magic in our lives.
For Arthur Fried, Gigi had been a triumph, but its success was bittersweet. A new generation of moviegoers wanted gritty dramas and rock and roll. The era of the MGM musical was coming to an end.
Mr. Fried, he was a big money maker for the studio. A big money maker. And then when musicals fell out of fashion, that his career really began to dwindle.
Well, I think Fried knew that it was all coming down, that it was all over. Certainly he wasn't going to be able to do this anymore at MGM because this studio was slowly unraveling, and he knew that this would be his swan song.
There are musicals afterwards, but they're not the same thing. There's not the same kind of detail work, not the same kind of inspiration.
I've been thinking I'd rather be miserable with you than without you.
It's hard to think of a film that gives us more of a sense of Gallic charm in a way that's not at all patronizing. Because these people, they love the Paris of mythology as well as the Paris of reality. Minnelli can show the negative as well as the positive, and they shine through. He's in love with this myth of what Americans think French culture is.
Gaston, please. No newspapers, no scandal.
Colette writes very honestly from the heart about both the pleasures and the pains of life and love. Colette loved to look at the reality of things. So Gigi is quite different in that it's a fairy tale story where a young girl becomes a beautiful, charming woman. Then I think people of every age love a love story that ends happily.
Madame, will you do me the honor, the favor, give me the infinite joy of bestowing on me Gigi's hand in marriage?
Thank him.
For little girls get bigger every day. Thank heaven for little girl.
To this day, I can't understand what people mean when they say, oh, in an American in Paris, I loved you. To me, I look like I don't know what I should do. You know, Gigi, no. There are moments where I think I'm really good because you really believe the little girl. Nobody ever guesses I was a grown-up woman and mother. And it's full of life, and this insistence on happiness is something beautiful. And I'm really very proud of this film.
Thank you.